Okay, so think about this for a second. Have you ever felt that little sting when your ego gets challenged? Or maybe you just stumble right into a conflict you totally didn't see coming.
Oh, definitely. It happens all the time, right? A tense meeting at work, maybe a misunderstanding with a friend.
Exactly. Or even just wrestling with something internally. Confrontations, let's be honest, they're part of being human.
You really are.
But it's the how, isn't it? How we actually respond to them. That's what really shapes our relationships, our careers, and maybe most importantly, our own kind of inner peace.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So our mission today on the Deep Seek Diaries is all about flipping that, turning those moments that feel like breakdowns into, well, hopefully breakthroughs.
Right.
Think of this as your shortcut, your deep dive into how to handle these tricky moments with a bit more grace and, with some actual strategy behind it.
And we're pulling from a really interesting mix of sources today, maybe a slightly unexpected blend. We're looking at Niccolo Machiavelli. Yes, that Machiavelli, but really digging into his pragmatic, sort of power-focused insights. Okay. But, and this is key, reinterpreting them ethically for today. We're not advocating for ruthlessness here.
Good. Yeah.
And then we're pairing that with, cutting-edge psychology, understanding emotional reactivity, how our brains react, and those crucial de-escalation techniques.
So like old school strategy meets modern psychology.
Exactly. Machiavelli gives us this lens for anticipating things, for acting decisively, for influence. And then psychology gives us the tools we absolutely need to manage our own internal reactions, our gut responses.
Because that's often the hardest part, managing yourself first.
Yeah.
So the goal is to help you respond with like real intention, not just knee-jerk reaction. I want to give you a practical, step-by-step guide for dealing with maybe difficult people or aggressors and how to actually, win, but not in an aggressive way, more like composed power.
Composed power. I like that. Yeah. It's about navigating it effectively with intelligence.
Okay, great. Before we dive deeper, though, just a quick reminder, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like the video if you're finding this useful. This is the Deep Seek Diaries, and you can find us on all the usual places: YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Mm-hmm. We've linked all the resources we're talking about today, books, websites, all that stuff down in the description. And please do check out our terms and conditions when you get a chance. Okay, now let's get into it.
All right. So let's start with that word we use all the time, overreaction. It's funny because psychologically speaking, you never actually overreact.
Really? How does that work? Because it definitely feels like people overreact sometimes. Or maybe I do.
Right. It feels that way. But any reaction, even intense anxiety or real anger, it's actually technically proportionate to how that specific person is seeing the situation at that moment.
Yeah.
Our responses are rooted in the super fast, nonverbal emotional processing. So the real challenge isn't judging the reaction as too much, but trying to figure out why it happened for that person and, critically, how we manage the fallout, the external impact.
That difference between internal feeling and external impact is huge. So if it's not really an overreaction, what causes that intense reactivity?
Yeah.
We're talking triggers.
Exactly. Triggers are a big part of it. Think of emotional reactivity as being shaped by, everything. Accumulated stress, big life events, maybe stuff from the past that hasn't quite healed.
Right.
That's why sometimes, what seems like minor criticism can just hit someone like a ton of bricks. It taps into what psychologists sometimes call old wounds or unhealed hurts.
And you see that at work too, right?
Yeah.
Not just personal life.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Constructive feedback suddenly triggers this massive defensiveness and boom, the conversation is just shut down. No growth possible.
It's like a switch just flips inside. What's going on in the brain then?
Yeah, it's pretty much exactly that. We call it emotional hijacking. Your amygdala, that's like the brain's ancient alarm system.
The lizard brain part.
Kind of, yeah. It basically hijacks the system. It triggers fight or flight in milliseconds, way faster than your rational brain, the prefrontal cortex, can even catch up.
Ah.
And here's the kicker. The amygdala can't tell the difference between an emotional threat, like, say, feeling humiliated in public, and an actual lion chasing you.
So you get the same physical reaction.
Yeah.
Heart pounding, tense muscles.
The whole 9 yards. Full physiological red alert, all from maybe just a perceived social slight or a challenge to your ego.
And these triggers, they're super personal, aren't they? Linked to our past.
Deeply personal. Often they trace right back to childhood stuff, feeling unheard, rejected, maybe parents who weren't emotionally there, or sometimes more significant traumas, losses, abuse. These create what we call core wounds. And these wounds are so painful, we instinctively try to avoid feeling them. So when something in the present, even something small, pokes at that wound, the amygdala just screams, danger, life, or death.
But what looks like an overreaction now is really an echo from the past.
Often, yeah, it's an echo amplified by maybe years of similar, smaller hurts. So dealing with it, managing it, it really needs self-compassion, looking inward, maybe even addressing those underlying wounds. You have to recognize that the biggest threat you're feeling is often coming from inside.
That's a lot to unpack. Okay, so beyond those deep emotional triggers, what about those mental shortcuts? Cognitive biases, you mentioned them earlier. How do they fuel conflict?
Yes, biases. Our brains love shortcuts, heuristics to make quick decisions, super useful most of the time, but in conflicts, they can lead us way off track toward really irrational conclusions.
Like what kind of biases?
Well, a classic one is confirmation bias. We just naturally look for stuff that confirms what we already think, and we conveniently ignore anything that contradicts it.
So in an argument, both sides are just finding evidence for their own view.
Exactly. Makes finding common ground incredibly hard. Think about only reading news that fits your politics. You just keep reinforcing your bubble.
Okay, what else?
How about reactive devaluation? This one's subtle but powerful. We dismiss an idea or a proposal simply because it came from the other side, someone we see as an opponent.
So a rival team member might have a great idea, but you shoot it down just because it's their idea.
Precisely. You devalue it reactively. It kills collaboration before it even starts.
Ouch. Okay, one more.
Let's talk about the bias blind spot. This is the big one, maybe. It's where we easily see biases in other people, but we fail to recognize our own.
Oh, I think I know some people like that. Maybe I'm like that sometimes.
We all are to some extent, and it just perpetuates conflict, doesn't it? Each side thinks, I'm being perfectly reasonable, they're the biased one. Leads to finger-pointing, zero self-reflection.
Yeah, that blind spot really slams the door shut on finding solutions. If everyone thinks they're objective and the other person is biased, you're just stuck.
Completely stuck. So overcoming conflict means not just knowing these biases exist, but actively fighting that blind spot, really cultivating self-awareness, deliberately seeking out different perspectives, even ones that make you uncomfortable.
All right, let's switch gears a bit. Let's bring in Machiavelli. How does his strategic thinking, ethically tweaked, help us here? You mentioned prevention first.
Yes, Machiavelli heavily emphasized prevention and anticipation, foresight, or what he called virtue. He did this great analogy comparing problems to diseases.
Oh, yeah.
He said something like, when a malady is detected early, it is easily cured, but when it is left to grow, it becomes incurable. His point was, ignore the small issues, the minor confrontations, and they'll inevitably fester into much bigger, nestier problems.
That makes sense. I remember reading in the discourses he even suggested that conflict itself, like between the rich and the poor in a state, could actually be a source of strength if managed right. He used ancient Rome as an example, didn't he, with the tribunes for the common people.
Exactly. A brilliant insight. Rome didn't try to stamp out the conflict. They created channels for it, like the tribunes, so grievances could be aired, laws could be forged. It actually made them stronger, fostered liberty.
So how does that apply to us, like in our teams or families?
It means we should try to proactively understand the underlying motivations, the humors, as he called them, of the people around us. And maybe don't automatically fear conflict. See it as a potential force for change, for building stronger relationships if you engage with it smartly, proactively.
Okay, but what if conflict is unavoidable? Machiavelli was big on decisive action, wasn't he? He thought hesitating looked weak.
He did. He believed hesitation could embolden opponents. Now, for us, we're not talking about, raising an army.
Right. Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. But force, in our context, translates to being resolute, applying your principles consistently, holding boundaries firm, implementing consequences when necessary.
So it's not about being cruel, but about being clear and consistent.
Precisely. It's about actions that, in the long run, might be more merciful, as he put it, than letting chaos or harm spread because you were unwilling to act. He also wasn't a fan of staying neutral in big conflicts. He thought picking a side, showing your commitment strategically, was usually better than trying to please everyone and ending up alienating both. It provides clarity.
Okay, that leads to maybe his most infamous line, "It's safer to be feared than loved." How on earth do we make that ethical for today? Does fear become respect?
That's the exact ethical reinterpretation we need. Fear isn't about terror. It's about earning respect and credibility through actions that are consistent, decisive, and crucially justified and transparent.
Can you give an example, like in an office setting?
Sure. Imagine a manager whose team misses a deadline because, frankly, they slacked off. The manager addresses it directly, firmly, fairly, maybe implements consequences agreed upon beforehand. Now, that might create some discomfort, maybe even a type of fear of not meeting expectations again.
Okay.
But if it's done consistently and transparently, not arbitrarily, it builds deep respect. People learn they can trust the leader to uphold standards. That builds competence, reliability. It's way more effective long-term than a leader who lets things slide, which just breeds resentment and poor performance. That consistent, justified accountability is a source of real influence.
Okay, that makes more sense than just raw fear. What about his ideas on psychological tactics?
Yeah, psychological acumen and ethical influence. Machiavelli knew perception was key. He advised projecting this image of quiet confidence, unwavering resolve to deter challenges. For us, that translates directly into strategic communication, managing your reputation, making sure your actions and intentions are clear, not easily twisted.
And he was pretty cynical about people being self-interested, right? So he advised always analyzing motivations.
He did. But we can flip that cynicism into something positive, cultivating high emotional intelligence. Instead of assuming the worst, it becomes about genuine empathy, trying to really understand what's driving the other person, even your opponent. What are their underlying needs, their fears? What are they really after? If you can grasp that, you've got a starting point for finding solutions.
That's a much more constructive way to look at it. Now, what about divide and conquer? That sounds pretty unethical.
It usually is if you're talking about pitting people against each other, but we can reinterpret it ethically. Instead of dividing people, you divide and conquer the problem.
How does that work?
You break down a complex issue into smaller, manageable parts. Or you address the actual root causes of division within a group. Or maybe you strategically isolate the problematic behavior from the person so you can address the behavior without attacking the individual and potentially unite people against the problem itself. The goal is ethical unity, not manipulation.
That's a really clever reframing. And he also valued cunning, didn't he? Indirect approaches.
He did. If you could achieve your goal through smart maneuvering, perhaps avoiding a direct clash, that was often seen as superior. For us today, that translates to diplomatic skill, sharp negotiation, trying to find those win-win solutions before everyone digs into their positions and things get hostile. It's about being strategically smart, not deceitful.
Okay, and wasn't there an animal analogy? The lion and the fox?
Lion and the fox, yes.
Yeah.
Famous one. The lion represents strength, courage, the power to deter threats directly. The fox represents cunning, shrewdness, the ability to recognize traps and navigate tricky situations indirectly.
So you need to be both.
Ideally, yes. It's about dynamic situational adaptability. Knowing when to be the lion direct, assertive, confronting the issue head on, and knowing when to be the fox indirect, clever, finding alternative routes, maybe using diplomacy or negotiation. You shift between them based on the situation, who you're dealing with, and what you ultimately want to achieve. It's all about flexibility.
I hope you're enjoying the topic so far. Just another quick reminder to please subscribe to the Deep Seek Diaries and like this video. It really helps us out. Don't forget, you can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all those places. And all the resources, books, websites are linked down below.
Okay, so we've got the psychology, we've got the reinterpreted strategy. How do we actually put this together? Practical steps. Let's start with managing ourselves, mastering self-regulation, calming that hijacked amygdala.
Yes, please. What actually works?
These aren't just fuzzy ideas, they're physiological tools. First, deep breathing. Sounds simple, but consciously slowing your breath.
Like the inhale for 4, exhale for 6 thing.
Exactly like that. It literally signals safety to your nervous system. It counteracts the fight or flight chemicals, clears your head. Practical step. Just try it next time you feel that heat rising. 4 counts in, hold 4, 6 counts out. A few times.
Okay, deep breaths. Got it. What else?
Self-affirmations. These are internal mantras. Things like, this isn't personal, or I can handle this, or this feeling will pass.
Does that really work when you're feeling attacked?
It can, yeah.
Yeah.
It helps create a little distance, reframes it. The trick is finding a phrase that works for you and repeating it silently. I am calm. I am in control. It anchors you.
Okay, anchors. I like that. Next.
Emotional labeling. Just consciously naming the feeling to yourself. Okay, I'm feeling really frustrated right now. Or, wow, that made me feel defensive.
So just identifying it helps.
It does. It engages your rational brain. It's like stepping back and observing the emotion instead of being completely swept away by it. Practice it. I notice I'm feeling anxious. That little bit of observation makes a difference.
Observing, not drowning.
Yeah.
Okay, last one.
Breaks in visualization. If possible, physically step away for a minute. A short walk, splash water on your face, gives you time to reset. If you can't leave, use visualization.
Like picturing a happy place.
Sort of, yeah. Picture somewhere. Calm, a beach, a forest, whatever works for you. Or even picture someone you admire who handles stress well. It redirects your focus constructively, breaks the emotional spiral. Even just closing your eyes for 10 seconds and picturing calm can help.
Okay, so we've used these tools. We're feeling a bit calmer internally. Now, how do we actually talk to the other person? Effective communication and empathy.
Right, building bridges now. First, your voice. Keep it calm, soft, maybe even encouraging. Our brains subconsciously mirror the tone we hear. Yelling breeds yelling. Calmness invites calmness.
Makes sense. What about words?
Choose them carefully. Clear, simple, non-provocative language. Don't overload them with information. And crucially, avoid blame. Use I statements. I felt frustrated when, not you always.
I statements, classic but effective.
Totally. And use positive framing. Instead of this is a disaster, try, okay, how can we solve this together? Or let's find a way forward. It signals collaboration.
And body language.
Huge. Keep it open. No crossed arms if possible. Maintain neutral facial expressions. Try not to scowl. And make appropriate eye contact. It all signals you're listening, you're engaged, you're not shutting down.
Right. You mentioned earlier how crucial active listening and validating feelings is, especially when someone seems to be, overreacting.
Yeah.
Why is that validation piece so powerful?
It's absolutely pivotal. Think about it. When someone feels like they're overreacting, they often also feel judged and unheard, which just makes the emotion bigger, right?
Yeah, good. Yeah.
So when you actively listen, really try to understand their point of view. Ask open-ended questions like, help me understand why you feel that way. Acknowledge their emotion without agreeing or disagreeing with the cause. I can see you're really upset about this. It's like you're throwing them a lifeline.
You're showing them you hear them.
Exactly. You paraphrase back. So if I understand correctly, you're feeling X because of Y. That active validation of showing they've been heard, it lowers the emotional temperature dramatically. It allows their rational brain to come back online because they don't feel like they have to fight to be understood anymore. It shifts the whole dynamic from judgment to understanding.
Okay, so understanding first, then problem solving, which brings us to proactive conflict resolution. How do we move towards solutions once things are calmer?
Well, first, you need to be attuned to the early warning signs of things heating back up. Notice those subtle shifts, voice getting tense again, body language closing off, interruptions starting. Catching it early lets you pause and maybe reapply those calming techniques.
Staying vigilant. Okay.
Then, yes, shift to collaborative problem solving. Brainstorm options, offer alternatives, actively look for that common ground, no matter how small it seems initially.
And that directly tackles that zero-sum bias we talked about, right? The idea that one person has to lose for the other to win.
Exactly. By focusing on shared interests, we both want this project to succeed, right? And brainstorming multiple potential solutions, you reframe it. It's not me versus you, it's us versus the problem. Practical step. Always push for more than one option. Ask, what are a few different ways we could approach this? It opens things up.
And setting boundaries is part of this too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Respectfully, of course.
Absolutely essential. You need to be clear about your limits, what you will and won't accept. State them calmly but firmly. Enforce them consistently. Sometimes you even need to educate people about your boundaries. Flexibility is good, but not if it means sacrificing your core needs or values.
Makes sense. And you also mentioned cultural sensitivity.
Crucial in today's world. Misunderstandings often happen simply because of different cultural norms around communication or conflict. Being aware of and respecting these differences can prevent so many issues, especially in diverse teams or communities. Practical step. Encourage open conversations about different communication styles. Maybe even seek out diversity training if it's relevant to your context.
Okay, this is all incredibly helpful, but we do need to touch on the dark side again. You mentioned the dark triad. These Machiavellian strategies, if used unethically manipulation, sowing distrust. The impact is really negative, isn't it?
Hugely negative. In workplaces, people high in Machiavellianism, the unethical kind, they spread rumors, they undermine colleagues, they play people off against each other. It creates this toxic environment of distrust.
Which must kill productivity and morale.
Completely. It stifles creativity because people are afraid to speak up. Job satisfaction tanks, turnover goes through the roof. It's one leg of that dark triad, along with narcissism and psychopathy, all sharing this kind of malevolence, this willingness to exploit others.
And historically, we've seen companies implode because of this, right? Like Enron.
Enron is a classic, tragic example. Deceit, manipulation, prioritizing personal gain, and stock price above absolutely everything else. It led to total collapse, jail time, ruined reputations. It shows that a purely amoral, win-at-all-costs approach just isn't sustainable, especially not in societies with legal systems and where reputation matters.
So the ethical path is actually the more sustainable one.
In the long run, absolutely. Which brings us back to the importance of building goodwill, trust, and ethical strategic intelligence. In today's world, respect and trust aren't just soft skills. They're fundamental drivers of loyalty, collaboration, and productivity.
So we can take Machiavelli's idea of cunning and transform it.
Exactly. Transform it into strategic intelligence. Being smart, being competitive, developing clever strategies, yes. But grounding it all firmly in ethical practices, in good governance, in basic human decency.
Because even Machiavelli admitted that goodwill was important for power.
He did. He acknowledged that ultimately the goodwill of followers and the people provides a much firmer source for long-term power than fear or coercion alone. Any tactic that destroys trust eventually backfires. Real, lasting influence today comes from integrity, competence, and the ability to genuinely connect with and inspire others. That's the ethical adaptation we need.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this all up. Mastering confrontation, it really starts inside, doesn't it? Understanding our own emotions, our triggers, those sneaky cognitive biases.
Absolutely. Self-awareness first. Then, layering on those Machiavellian strategies, the foresight, the decisiveness, the influence, but always through that ethical lens, and using those practical psychological tools for calming ourselves down and communicating effectively with empathy.
So the goal isn't really to avoid conflict altogether, because that's probably impossible. It's more about transforming it.
Exactly. Seeing it as a chance for growth, for strengthening relationships, for actually getting better outcomes together. When you blend that strategic foresight with emotional intelligence, you move beyond just reacting. You become, like you said earlier, a composed strategic force.
Okay, so final thought then. What's the real win here?
I think the real win in any confrontation isn't about dominating the other person or crushing their argument. It's about navigating the challenge with clarity and integrity. It's about building trust, even through disagreement. Ultimately, it's about shaping your world, your interactions, with intentional, composed power, rather than just letting impulsive reactions run the show.
Shaping your world with intentional power. I like that. A great place to end. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode of the Deep Seek Diaries. Please don't forget to check out the linked resources in the description section. Hit the subscribe and like buttons as you head off if you haven't already. Until the next episode, goodbye.